his lunchbox. Do you wonder what's in it? Do you want to see what's in? Should we show him, Peter? What do you think? All right, we can show him. Let's see. Peter's looking, digging deep. What did Peter bring? Trail mix. Do you like trail mix, Peter? Yeah. I think out of here, the pretzels would probably be my favorite. What else? Aw, Peter brought some to share. There's one for each of us. Well, Peter, I think I have to tell the boys and girls not have to. I get to tell the boys and girls a story, but do you want to go have a snack right now? All right, can you take mine with you for now? Thank you, Peter. All right, our story, let's get right into it. I'm super excited. We're going to talk about this morning how Jesus provides. Well, Peter brought in his snack, and God provides us food. I can think of 2 instances in my life where God specifically provided food for me. One time in my family, my dad had gotten really sick and was in the hospital, and one of the ladies at the church realized we were going to school each day, we needed lunch. So she brought us some juice boxes and some little Debbie cakes and some things to put in our lunch boxes. And that was really nice. That was something we needed. And then later when I was an adult, I got hurt my knee, had to have a surgery, and some different people in the church made me meals and brought me groceries. Well, God provides us our food, and then God provides for us transportation. Now, some of you, obviously, most of you can't drive, but God provides us with transportation. Maybe you have a bike. Maybe your parents have a car or a van, or maybe you use public transportation, but we have ways to get around. Well, God provided my car for me, and I know that for sure. The car I had before this one, it got wrecked in an accident, and I went looking for cars, and I kept looking and looking and looking, and I would come home disappointed because every car I looked at, either I couldn't afford or was going to cost too much to fix, and I was discouraged. And I found out that the church took up an offering, and I was able to pay for the down payment for my car and the first year's worth of payments. God provides. But what about your house? Where are you staying? Where are you living? God's provided that for you. God provided an amazing house for me. It fits my family well. Everything's on one story. It's close to school. The cost was something I could afford. I look around my house and I think, wow, what a God we serve. To provide my house, to provide my car, to provide my food, to provide my clothes. So many things He provides. Well, He provides our needs, but if you look around you, you have a lot of things around you that are more than just needs. They're just wants. And it reminds me of the watch I have on my arm. It was definitely a want. It was something I'd never told anybody I wanted. And the Lord provided. And I know it came from Him. It came through a friend. But when I think about how God provides for us, now does that mean just because I want it, I get it? Just because I go to God and I ask, I get it? God isn't like a genie in a bottle where we rub it and we get our 3 wishes. I don't want you to think that about God. God does for us what is best. He knows you need food. He gives you food. He knows you need housing and clothes. He gives that to you. And then He desires to give us the things we want. But sometimes He says, not yet. It's not time. Or He says, no, that's not what's best for you. But when He can say yes, He always says yes. Well, we're going to read about a story in our Bible, and I was reading it, and I was studying it, and I read about it in Matthew, and then it's in Mark, so I flipped to Mark, and I'm like, oh, I've got to read the boys and girls the part in Mark. And then I flipped to John, and I'm like, oh, John tells even more. So I'm going to jump around a bit. Hopefully you can keep up with me. I like to talk fast, but we're going to start in Matthew chapter 14, and I'm going to start in verse 13. It says, when Jesus heard of it, we're just going to pause here a second. I read that and I was like, well, heard of what? What did Jesus hear of? What Jesus had heard was that his friend, John the Baptist, his relative, had been killed. When you think of that, it kind of makes you sad. But it kind of sets the stage and explains something to us. It says he departed thence by ship. He wanted to get away into a desert place apart. He wanted to be alone. He wanted to get away from the crowds. And when the people had heard thereof, they followed him on foot out of the city. So the people heard that Jesus had left and they followed him. So then I flipped to Mark and I was reading and I found it interesting. In verse 33, not only did they just follow, it says, and the people saw them departing, and many knew him, and ran afoot thither out of all cities, and outwent them and came together unto him. Not only did they just follow him, they ran to follow him. Ran to follow him. Do you run to Christ? Are you excited to follow him? Are you excited about church? Are you excited and looking forward to the next time we get to meet? Or is church no big deal? Bible no big deal? Well, it was important. These people wanted to follow Jesus, so they ran after him. And then continuing on in Mark chapter 6, that was verse number 30, verse 31. And he said unto them, come ye yourselves apart into a desert place and rest a while. So we're backing up a little bit here. It says that the disciples, for there were many coming and going, and they had no leisure so much as to eat. The disciples had been so busy, they didn't even have time to eat. So that was another reason that they were separating into the desert place. Well, the people followed them, and in verse 34, and when Jesus came out and saw much people, he was moved with compassion toward them, because they were as sheep, not having a shepherd. And he began to teach them things. These people, he looks out, Jesus looks out at the crowd, at all of these people. He has compassion. He says they don't know, they don't understand. They're like sheep just wandering around. They need a shepherd. They need someone to guide them. And Jesus had compassion. Matthew also adds that Jesus started to heal the sick. So Jesus, he's healing their sick. He's talking to them. He's teaching them as their shepherd what they need to know and where they need to go, like a shepherd would lead his sheep. Then verse 35, and when the day was now far spent, and his disciples came unto him and said, this is a desert place, and now is the time far past. It's late at night, Jesus. What about these people? Well, we're going to jump over to John here a minute, because John uses some names and gives us a little more detail. I am in John chapter 6, and I'm looking at verse number 5. I'm looking at verse number 7. Philip answered him. So Jesus has asked, what are we going to do about the food? How can we feed these people? Verse 7, Philip answered them, 200 pennyworth of bread is not sufficient for them, that every one of them may take little. He says, what we've got here, Jesus, it's not enough. Then verse 8, one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said unto him, oh, I noticed that Peter's coming back. Did you hear, Peter, that they needed food? Well, Peter, you and I might enjoy some goldfish and some animal crackers. A snack does sound good. I hope you enjoyed yours. But I'm not so sure that in the Bible that they had goldfish and animal crackers. But I think you're on the right track. Hold on 1 second and we'll check out what's in your basket. Because the Bible tells us that there was a lad there who had heard that the people needed food. Well, there was a lad. A lad is a young man, and he came forward and he brought his lunchbox. Now you can see that's kind of a small lunchbox. Peter brought his basket too. How much was that going to be to feed all of those people? Well, let's see what we've got in our lunchbox here, Peter. What do we have? A fish. We have 1 fish. And 2 fish. All right, 2 fish. We're getting somewhere. We got a little bit of food for the people. And 1 piece of bread, 1 loaf of bread. And another loaf of bread. We're up to 2. We're up to 3. We're getting a little bit more food. 4. And 5. 5 loaves of bread. Okay, for 1 little boy, that's probably a sufficient lunch. 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. But what about the multitude? The many people that Jesus had there? Well, they bring this lunch to Jesus. You know what the Bible tells us Jesus did? He looks up into heaven and he prays. And he thanks God the Father for the food that's been given to them. And the disciples were kind of like, Jesus, 5 loaves, 2 fish. Have you noticed the number of people? This isn't going to work. The Bible tells us there were over 5,000 men, plus women, plus children, and how are they going to eat off 5 loaves and two fish? Well, Jesus takes a piece of the bread and he starts to break it. And he breaks again. And he breaks again. And he breaks again. And the Bible tells us that he just kept breaking it and sharing it. And he would give a basket to one of the disciples, and they would go and they would hand it out to the people, and they would distribute it. And they had the people sit down, and they kept handing out food, and they kept handing out food, and Jesus kept breaking it. And the fish and the bread multiplied and multiplied and multiplied. Well, they finished eating. Everybody ate until they were stuffed. They were so full. And the Bible tells us that when they had finished eating, there were 12 baskets of leftover food. 12 baskets of leftover food. I don't know about you boys and girls. I don't know about Peter Panda here, but leftovers are okay for maybe a day, maybe 2. But if I have to keep eating the same thing over and over and over and over, I really get sick of it. I think I would get sick of the 12 baskets of extra food. But how did they get 12 baskets when they started with just the 5 loaves and the 2 fish? How? Because Jesus performed a miracle. That's right, Peter, there were 5,000 men, plus the women, plus the children. It was a miracle of Jesus. John chapter 6 and verse 14 gives us kind of the climax of this story. Then those men, when they had seen the miracle, they saw it happen that Jesus did, said, "This is of a truth that prophet that should come into the world." This miracle helped to show the people that Jesus was the Son of God. Jesus provided for them. This little boy gave his lunch. What do you have that you can give Jesus? Did you know you can't outgive Jesus? You can give and you can give and you can give, and Jesus can keep providing. You can't ever outgive him. Are you willing to give? Are you willing to show compassion like Jesus did? Well, I hope you boys and girls have a great Sunday. I hope that you enjoy time with your family today. See you next week.